that is because that one lane was able to open. So we're seeing progress that there. I want to take you back to the Golden Gate Bridge, though, because we're also seeing some progress there as officers appear to be taking some of the people into custody. We saw them face to face with them, talking to them. And I think we are starting to see some potential arrests at this point, which will probably give a little bit of hope for some of the people that are stuck in those lanes right now. Very tough job for the CHP because you have to come at this in a way that is going to make sure that this remains peaceful. Okay, I'm being directed here to the bottom left side of the screen where we are seeing, okay, one person there, it looks like. Yep, being walked away. Yep, you can see that person. I believe that is the person there in the fluorescent green vest being walked away by officers. So I think that we are seeing the potential for loosening up here on the Golden Gate Bridge, but right now both directions are blocked. The protest started on the southbound lanes, and that is where the cars are stuck. And then the CHP ended up closing down the northbound lanes to try to keep some people out of this mess and also give themselves a little bit of leeway because we're talking the Golden Gate Bridge. There's no parallel road that people can take as an alternative. All right, we are going to be going back, I think, to the plaza, the toll plaza, where, well, nothing's been happening there, no vehicles in or out of the city. And I think we're seeing another arrest there, just where another arrest being made. But okay, here's the live look at the Golden Gate Bridge toll plaza. Very rare scene where you would see no vehicles going in either direction. And again, this started at about 8 this morning. So toward the end of the heat of the morning commute. And this was part of the rolling protest that had started in the East Bay on 880. So the protesters, well coordinated, trying to keep officers on their toes. Okay, and we are going to go back, I'm being told, to southbound 880. That is where we are seeing protesters now blocking the on-ramp. So let's keep this straight. A lot of the issues, all the issues really that we saw this morning on 880 were in the northbound lanes. That is where protesters had chained themselves to heavy barrels and blocked all the lanes. Southbound was still open, but now we see this new line of protesters blocking one of the on-ramps to southbound 880. So if we can just reiterate one more time, do avoid the area as this does continue to evolve and protesters potentially find new inroads to disrupting the traffic there in the East Bay. 880 near the Coliseum, we're starting to see traffic slowly move in the northbound lanes, but southbound lanes right now being blocked by these protesters, and we don't see any vehicles in that area, so officers must have caught wind of this and are keeping people away from even trying to get on those southbound lanes. You can see some people just passing by the area, which is, if you're able to, certainly the best option at this point. Nobody wants to get stuck in this mess because no timeline for when this traffic is going to loosen up. But we did see police, CHP moving in on both the protest on 880 as well as the protest on the Golden Gate Bridge. So you would think within the next hour or so, we would see these protesters moved out and we would just have to deal with the traffic backup. Here's a live look right now at 880 where that protest started. The lanes that you're seeing here on the closer side of the screen, those are the southbound lanes, which are still moving. It's the northbound lanes where you see those officers still dealing with those protesters, not only the people that they have to get out of here, but then those heavy barrels. Obviously, they have the equipment to do so, but they have to move it into the area and get rid of these heavy barrels that the people had once chained themselves to. Again, pro-Palestinian protesters, part of a larger A15 protest for April 15th. That is today, a day that a lot of people are going to remember for not good reasons because of being stuck in traffic for hours. And, you know, it's not only a nuisance for some people, it could be a very serious situation if people have emergencies, people have people they need to get to. People have a plane to catch, varying levels of urgency, obviously, but very, very disruptive. And we heard from some of the commuters who were stuck in this backup saying, hey, I don't have anything to do with US policy or what's going on in Gaza. I agree with the protesters. A lot of people have said that, but the way that it's affecting their life and that they're basically helpless to change is certainly a huge frustration for probably thousands of people that were dealing with this. Again, you're taking a live look at the northbound lanes once this white truck passes through of 880 near the Coliseum, and you can see those officers still trying to get those people and those barrels out of the way. Let's go back to Gianna Franco again, because Gianna, you've got the context. You've been here for hours watching this all unfold.
Yeah, I mean, the closure on 880 started at about 6:30, so several hours now later, we're seeing some movement on the freeways. And northbound, if you're headed through here, so the locator here is just south of 980, right near that 7th Street exit, not too far from Embarcadero, an area where, you see a lot of trucks travel near that Port of Oakland area, and that's what's been shut down. But it's good to kind of see how our photographer pulled out so you can see that one lane now open. That's the fast lane, the one closest to the center divide, that's allowing traffic to work their way through there. Now, you still have those 3 right lanes, though, completely shut down. And I don't know when those will open up, but at least this is a bit of relief for anyone traveling through there.
Yes. I mean, any movement is some movement at this point, because like we've been saying, I mean, if you're in the middle of the backup, there's nowhere to go. You can't change your mind, turn around, find an alternate. You are just literally stuck there. And you saw what dozens, hundreds of vehicles in that situation when it comes to between these two protests.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing too. And if you're stuck, especially towards the center divide or those left lanes, you can't really work your way over to exit an off ramp either.
Right.
And a lot of cars are struggling to do that. But this will help a lot of people travel through there. Let's get you updated just on how all of these closures look, because as Ann has been talking about, it's not just 880, it's that closure on the Golden Gate Bridge as well. So I'm going to show you a map here. You can see you've got the middle of your screen there. You've got westbound 80 heading towards the Bay Bridge. You've got northbound 80 where the closure is in Oakland, just south of 980. And then off to the side there where it says 30 miles per hour, that's the closure on the Golden Gate Bridge. So these are the issues that we're dealing with right now. And these are kind of areas that tend to bottleneck anyway for anyone traveling through there. So you've got the one lane open northbound 880 near 7th Street, where they have that massive closure there still as first responders deal with the protesters there. You've got all the extra backup now on West 80 for anyone avoiding that ride on 101 heading towards the Golden Gate Bridge. And you've got this here, the Golden Gate Bridge still completely shut down. So that traffic just heading northbound is stuck right at that last San Francisco exit, a few cars just beyond that point. So hopefully they're working to try to get some of those vehicles off the roadway. You can't travel north there, and then you can't travel south, obviously coming out of Sausalito, working your way towards the Golden Gate Bridge. This closure is still in effect. And even though the protesters are just on that one side, they've got both directions of the Golden Gate Bridge closed because of that. It's typically about a 15-minute travel time to go south 101 from the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge over towards this area. Obviously, it's taking more than that, over an hour, and they're diverting traffic off at that Sausalito exit. And a lot of people were using the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge and ferries as alternate, which are still your options right now. We're still at a point where you obviously cannot cross or travel through the Golden Gate Bridge. And here's a live look at the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, where you can see westbound commuters. So on the middle of your screen there, those are the commute direction, what we would typically see in the morning, heading over towards the Marin side. On the opposite side, traffic's actually moving okay, but it's 1041. We don't see as many cars on the roadway, not the bulk of the commute that we would typically see. But
that is good news. And Gianna, not to interrupt, but if we can talk again about the alternate routes. Oh, we are seeing some major action here on 880, actually. Let's get the latest there.
Yeah, no, and you're right. That Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, that was the alternate for the Golden Gate. But look at this. This is 880. This has cleared up tremendously from what we saw just moments ago for travelers heading through here. All of this was backed up well into San Leandro, almost to 238. Look, it's clear now in both directions, which is great news. So that indicates to me that they're with that one lane open now, and they're diverting traffic off the freeway there. That's really making things a lot better for anyone traveling through there. So thankfully, we're seeing some better news, and for anyone traveling through there.
I wonder if we can go back to that live shot, if our producers and directors can head us back to that live shot where we saw the officers in that confrontation with the protesters on 880 near the Coliseum to see if, okay, they are still there. Those lanes are still blocked, but apparently the opening of that one left lane has allowed a lot of that traffic to clear up. And they do still have 3 of those lanes closed down, but the backup was able to really dissipate quicker than I thought. Is that a little surprising?
Yeah, I mean, it's been bottlenecking through there, and they've probably had this lane open for, I would say, almost 45 minutes now. So that's good news, which is alleviating some of that traffic. What probably also happened too, Anne, is they were able to maybe, with moving that left lane there, help cars get off on the off ramps too. So that would certainly make a big difference. But yeah, much better news, which means at least with this one lane open, because once you're past this, you're probably moving a lot better the rest of the way along the freeway. It's just getting to this point where it bottlenecks down. What we would typically see if like there was an accident or a traffic alert when they shut down several lanes. Obviously, seeing it closed for several hours made a huge, huge mess on the freeways. But it's good to see that it's finally getting a lot better.
All right, Gianna, I'm hearing that we have Jeff Harp on the phone. He is our security consultant. He's been with us through a lot of issues around the Bay Area over the past decade. And now, from what I understand, he is in the North Bay and stuck in some of the traffic. Actually, Jeff, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Ann Makadick here at KPIX CBS News Bay Area.
Yeah, Ann, how are you doing?
Yes, well, I'm all right because I'm not stuck in the traffic. Are you? Where are you? What's going on?
Well, I was stuck in Sausalito for about an hour and a half. Unfortunately, I did not have the radio on, and I just assumed it was an accident. But finally, I turned the radio on, and it was right before I got to Spencer Avenue, so I was able to get off and turn around. But it was about 2 hours in the traffic.
Okay, so you're now safe. You're home?
Yeah, I'm home now.
Okay, all right. So good news there. No, Jeff, I know you've walked us through a lot of issues, again, like I said, over the past decade, a lot of security issues when it comes to, everything from protests to cybersecurity issues. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on here and what the police are dealing with?
Well, the Bay Area was ground zero for First Amendment activities, and it sort of prides itself on that. But what happens when we have these differences of opinion, whether it's support for one country or another, and these protesters, set up a blockade, certainly during rush hour traffic, it snarls all kinds of things and it complicates things. And think about emergency services and things like that. So it becomes a real big, not only economic problem for us, but a response problem to emergencies.
Yes, certainly. People are simply stuck and are dealing with any variety of circumstances. If you can give us an officer's perspective, the CHP there, we know that they've been talking with the protesters, sometimes for hours, and the layman might say, hey, why don't they just move in and get them out of there? Why don't we get some tear gas? Just move them out. It's not that simple.
No, it's not that simple. And certainly CHP wants to honor those folks' ability to voice their opinion. But what happens is you get these people out there and they decide they want to complete, there's no line of communication. It's their way or the highway, so to speak. And now suddenly you've got people sitting on the Golden Gate Bridge, unwilling to move, maybe throwing their keys over the bridge. And now what do you do? So it's not a violent situation, but it certainly is a situation where law enforcement has to exercise extreme patience and judgment.
Well, let's back it up to when we saw this happen on the Bay Bridge last year during the APEC summit. Very similar situation, and there ended up being dozens of arrests, but these people didn't end up facing any jail time. They made a deal with the judge. When you see protesters that dealt with that once, do you feel as if they might have been emboldened to do so again?
Well, and they always do. Look back what happened during the Vietnam era when all these people marched on Washington, D.C. They were allowed to do it. There was some violence that happened. And these sort of things tend to perpetuate themselves. So we allowed APEC, we allowed people to go on the bridge, we allowed people to, hang out over on YBI and stop traffic from coming into the city. Now, these folks obviously can think, Well, I can do that. The judge dismissed the case, told me I need to behave. So who knows? These people probably have the same concept that whatever's going to happen to them, it'll be dismissed.
And again, they pride themselves on being peaceful protesters, just trying to get the message out there. We're trying to stop the world, make everybody think about what's happening in Gaza. But from a security perspective, what challenges are posed, besides just the simple fact that ambulances can't get through? You know, when you're shutting down a landmark like the Golden Gate Bridge, I mean, what concerns could we have here?
Well, and it's not just like stopping traffic or, stopping emergency services. You don't know. You have to assume that there could be somebody that's trying to do harm somewhere. That has potential. And certainly those who are out there that would like to do harm can use this as an opportunity to do so and really create havoc.
Yes, so a lot of possibilities here, and of course, we're just watching this all unfold. Taking a live look at the Golden Gate Bridge right now. As far as your experience this morning, how did this affect your day, Jeff?
Well, I mean, like I said, I sat in traffic for about 2 hours until I finally realized I probably should put the radio on and listen to see what was going on. And fortunately, I was before I got all the way to the bridge, because once you're sort of to the bridge, you have no option
You're
about
on it.
turning around. Yeah, so I was able to turn around and head back north, but some people are not. I mean, I can see from the footage that people are stuck on the bridge, and
Right.
very unfortunate. I always feel like there's a proper way to protest and an improper way to protest, and certainly this doesn't fall in that category of proper.
Right, right. Okay, and then talk a little bit about the decision. I know you're not in contact with the officers there on the ground, but from your perspective, we saw the protesters shut down the southbound lanes, and then we had the police shut down the northbound lanes. Talk a little bit about that decision, because again, I think maybe somebody watching who doesn't have a lot of the logistical knowledge would say, oh, well, at least let cars go by on one of the lanes. We have these removable barriers on the bridge. Let's make some movement happen.
Yeah, but the thing that ends up happening here is you have a lot of people in one place, and if traffic's not moving one direction and you got people driving by and looking in the other direction, it really creates a serious accident-prone situation. You don't want to have that either. So stopping the traffic really is the best thing to do, because it allows officers to sort of contain the protest area, and also allows people, or it doesn't allow people to come by and just look and see what's going on.
Right. There's that as well, which would just cause more people stuck on the bridge. We're taking a live look again at 880. It looks like the protesters have been completely cleared out, and now officers are cleaning up. So very good news on 880. And we've already seen that traffic backup dissipate quite a bit, as Gianna was showing us earlier. So really good news, 880 near the Coliseum. It looks like they're going to be able to reopen those lanes very soon. Police made several arrests, and now they're cleaning up that scene and should be able to reopen those lanes. Of course, a lot of questions right now about how many people were arrested, what charges they might face. Jeff, are you still with us?
I'm still with you.
Okay, yeah, talk a little bit about where we go from here with these protesters. And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but could you see stiffer penalties when we see these demonstrations continuing to try to put some sort of stop to this happening in the future?
Yeah, I just pulled out my crystal ball here, and what I looked at is I said, if you had harsher enforcement penalties, then you'd see some of this stop. But again, it's we pride ourselves on allowing First Amendment activities. I think when you start stopping commerce and start creating havoc on a national landmark, things like that, I think that's sort of where we need to draw the line, and we need to get these people to move on. Let them protest somewhere. Let them march on some other monument that's not going to stop all the traffic into the north, from the North Bay into San Francisco, or from 880 on the South Bay side. So.
Yeah, and kind of what we touched on earlier. Again, the security concerns here, because that's your wheelhouse. You have protesters that don't mean harm. They're trying to protest peacefully and get their message out. But then you have the potential of a bad actor coming in, seeing this and wanting to take advantage of it.
Right, and that law enforcement has to think that way. They don't fully think the sky is falling, but they have to be prepared for the worst. And if it doesn't happen, wonderful. But,
Right.
you know, the thing is, these opportunities just create that sort of situation where it makes it more viable to happen.
Right. Okay. Taking a live look at the Golden Gate Bridge, still at a standstill. If we can take any hope from the protest that started hours before that at 6:30 this morning at 8:80, things are clearing up there. This is a live look though at the toll plaza. You can see no traffic moving northbound or southbound. This has been shut down for almost 3 hours now. 3 hours on the Golden Gate Bridge, and you can see officers there still facing off with a couple of people. Their banner is down. So, this piecemeal approach, again, if we can get into the officers' heads, are they negotiating with these people?
Well, they are negotiating it in a sense. It's not like they pulled in, you know, a bunch of negotiators to try to figure out what's going on here. We know what's going on. We know what they want. You know, we know what they've done. And the officers were trying to exercise as much patience and skill to try to get this thing peacefully resolved and get these folks to move on. I'm sure there's some complicated issues with some of that. You know, if you park your car on the bridge and walk away, you know, it becomes an issue. You can't get tow trucks in there.
Right.
Again, from a security perspective, this is just not a good situation.
I mean, when it does come to tow trucks, though, they could eventually be let in on those northbound lanes, right? But I guess depending on how many people could have thrown their keys into the bay,
Yeah.
that's a process.
Yeah, I mean, they can also they can, those are movable Jersey barriers anyway, so they can get in there, come on the opposite side of the traffic, and get these cars moved at some point. They want to try to do it in a manner that's not going to be, you know, super disruptive to everybody else, and, you know, cause traffic everywhere else to be snarled. And I'm looking at your live shot right now. I just happened to look at the TV, and it looks like they do have officers talking to some of these people
Right.
in the cars, but doesn't appear as though the people in the cars have any place to go.
Yeah,
or
it
wanna
is a
go.
really, really slow moving process. Again, taking a look at that bridge being closed down for about 3 hours. Want to bring back Gianna Franco because we certainly have movement in the East Bay. Good news for anybody trying to get through there. The protesters have been removed from the northbound lanes of 880. Gianna, what are you seeing when it comes to the traffic impact there?
Well, and I just got an update from our photographer who's out there. There's still some activity in those 3 right lanes. Excuse me, those 3 right lanes. They still have at least a couple of people there with those barrels that they're trying to still exit off the freeway or remove. So those lanes are still completely shut down, but there are the left lanes that are now open. That far left lane has been reopened. So what that means is traffic is actually moving so much better than what we saw, at least within the last 30 minutes. If you're taking that north 880 ride, I would still use alternates and stick with 580 because the closure is still in effect. You can see there's still that activity there on scene, and you've got the police activity, you've got the Caltrans truck still there, and you've got them still working on that, and you've got that northbound side still backed up as you approach this area, but they are letting traffic through that left lane, which certainly has made the biggest difference for anyone commuting in and around there. If I show you our maps right now, and you can see our photographers zoomed in there, they still have at least one person there, you know, connected and stuck to one of those barrels. But jumping over to our maps right now, look at, it's 31 minutes now. I just checked those travel times to go from 238 to the MacArthur Maze. So that's where you enter over towards the Bay Bridge, and still very slow down at 6 miles per hour. But if you're headed past the Coliseum, things have certainly improved in that area, thankfully, getting a lot better there. You're really going to see those brake lights mostly concentrated now to the area where the closure is, which is near, you know, just south of 980, near 5th Street, near Embarcadero. But as you head south of there, if you're taking northbound 880, look at this. It's actually moving along a lot better, at
Really
least
good.
south of that area, a lot better than what we saw earlier. I mean, it was a standstill, you know, all well into San Leandro earlier this morning. So it's still improving. They still have work to do, you know, north of there, but definitely a lot better than what we saw before. So if you want to use 580, it's still slow westbound through Oakland, but that has also improved as an alternate. If you want to use West 80, we're seeing extra busy conditions there towards the Bay Bridge. That's because a lot of people utilize South 101 to the Richmond San Rafael Bridge to cut across 80 to get back into the city via the the Bay Bridge. And if you're stuck in that mess southbound, obviously lanes are still closed at the Golden Gate Bridge. This is that second location where the protesters are staged. Anne has been talking about this here at the Golden Gate Bridge. And you've got the closure northbound and you've got that closure southbound. You know, we talked a little bit about public transit. You know, right now it's about an hour if you were traveling, say, South 101 from 37 down to the Golden Gate Bridge. That should only be about a 25-minute commute without traffic. 15 minutes from the Richmond San Rafael Bridge. So it's obviously still a very big mess through there. As you heard, you know, earlier from Jeff, they're, you know, diverting traffic off the freeway there at Spencer in Sausalito. You know, that's how they're trying to get vehicles off the roadway there. But, you know, traveling through there, it's not a ton of options when it comes to public transit. You do have the ferry system that you can use, but obviously the buses, which travel south for the commute direction, can't move through this area because can't get across the span with that closure. Because you can see in our live shot there, it's still in, you know, very, very active, and still causing a lot of issues for anyone traveling through here.
Yeah, so I mean, just this is the Bay Area. There's only certain ways to get in and out of the city and over to the other side of the bay. And so that's when we see the importance of public transit. When you look at something like this, again, we're taking a live look at the Golden Gate Bridge, which is completely blocked right now. You only have those options, the ferries, BART, and it becomes very important to remember that those are options when you see only a few ways to get in and out. Again, this is part of a nationwide protest called A15, April 15th. Obviously, that is a date. They're calling it an economic blockade. We are also following news from around the country of very similar protests. These are people that don't want U.S. tax money going to Israel. They are defending the Palestinian people right now in Gaza, but we have been following hours-long traffic delays on both 880 and the Golden Gate Bridge coming in and out of San Francisco. It has been a major ordeal for a lot of vehicles that have been stuck there, in some cases for several hours. So we're going to continue to follow this breaking news on our web streaming service that is on our website, kpix.com/live. You can also find it on the CBS News app. Go to the CBS News app. It's free. And then scroll down to Bay Area. We are going to continue to follow this live there. We're also going to be back here on television on KPIX Channel 5 at noon for the very latest. So stay with us on the streaming service. We're going to keep it live over there. In the meantime, we're going to turn you over to Young and the Restless on Channel 5 and then be back here at noon. Thank you for joining us on this breaking news. Major